This is Colin Richards, and you're listening to the Lord and Richards Show. And in this particular episode, we're talking about some of the volatility that's occurring in our world right now, particularly related to the wars and rumors of wars that we see not only in Russia with the Ukraine, but also in Taiwan and their continued struggle with China. And of course, this has been going on for a long time, and there are other conflicts going on we're not even putting into the headlines of the news. And a frequent question always has to do with, how is this going to affect our retirement? How is this going to affect our portfolio? Because that's what we're doing at Lord & Richards. We're helping insulate you against the economy and the volatility and the political events out there, and helping you create kind of an economic bubble. We call it being financially independent, and we're doing that from a biblical point of view. So today we're diving in based on the principles of God's sovereignty that we found in Amos chapter 2, verse 6, recognizing, number one, challenging times are always going to be with us. Number two, that God is in control. He doesn't want us to panic or act purely on emotion. And number three, to prioritize planning and systems in our investing over being reactionary. So I think we know that, but we just tend to default to panic mode, I think, or some of us just go right down into denial and retreat. And we want to avoid both of those extremes. We also want to avoid the extreme of greed, where maybe we think we're enlightened to a degree that we can predict the outcome of markets or certain investments, and we take on unnecessary risk. There are a lot of events right now that can affect our clients, and I'm going to speak about these for a moment, not to put forward a message of hopelessness, but to remind you that with a well thought out, carefully designed plan, you can bypass most of the problems that are being created right now. For example, let's talk about inflation. Okay, that's going to obviously be in our mind for quite a while. Although there is no sign of inflation stopping, now it's topping over 7%, recently 7.5% year over year. It seems that the president is merely going to pass the buck on that to the Federal Reserve. The president, our government, the Federal Reserve have really made a number of key errors in my estimation. And I think I have the backing of some pretty well-regarded economists and thought leaders in this space. One of the errors that we see, particularly the Federal Reserve making, since the president's going to pass the buck to them, but he made the same error, and of course it's for political expedience and to get the pressure off, is to say, well, this inflation we're experiencing, it's transitory. It's just going to be here a while. It's because of COVID. Naturally, we had some fallout, so we're not going to see this around very long. Well, historically, high inflation periods don't last forever, but they can last several years and have a dramatic impact on the quality of your life, what you're able to do with the money you have, and what the value of that money is. And what has occurred, not only at the government level, but at the Federal Reserve level, is that too much money has been thrown into an economy that is already overheated and doesn't need it. We've known this was a possibility, but not enough care was exercised. And so as the Fed has thrown more and more liquidity into the market, at the same time, it hasn't pulled back on the quantitative easing measures. Okay, so creating just access to easy money, keeping interest rates really artificially low. And this has been going on for years and years and years. Once we learned in the prior financial crisis in 07, 08, 09 that these tools were available, they've gotten used to the max. And interest rates have been extraordinarily low, allowing easy access to money and lending, flooding the market with excess liquidity. So two key mistakes. Number one, believing that this inflation isn't going to be around for a while and doesn't need any serious work. And number two, just allowing money to be easy access. And so a mistake that I believe is forming even now is that at the next meeting of the Federal Reserve, they're going to make another mistake and fail to be aggressive enough in raising rates and getting rates taken care of now before they have to really go crazy with them later when inflation just continues to be a problem. So the Fed needs to get aggressive on raising rates. You say, oh, I thought it was always bad to raise rates. No, raising rates helps control how fast money moves out into the economy. Because if you let money move too fast out into the economy, people have too much in their hands, You have too much money chasing not enough goods and services. And the supply of money becomes greater than the supply of goods that it can purchase, and therefore, naturally, prices go up. When supply is not as great as demand, prices are going to go up. Now, the Biden administration has not been without error. Even though they're passing the buck to the Federal Reserve, we see, first of all, higher energy costs are contributing to the higher prices. Higher energy costs are part of this extraordinary inflation that we're seeing, and it impacts across so many different areas, not just gas at the pump or heating your home. Remember that it takes energy to move items from point A to point B via trucks, the railways, airlines, and so forth. Fuel goes into the cost of your goods. So if you buy a shirt down at Walmart or TJ Maxx or wherever you do your shopping, built into the cost of that shirt that you paid was the cost of transporting it from point A to point B, the cost of keeping the lights on at the factories and generating the power that runs the equipment, and on and on and on. So energy is critical. And this administration, the Biden administration, because of its extreme liberal agenda, and don't be fooled, okay, there's an agenda there, has besieged energy, has besieged the energy industry. And so they have helped create the higher costs that are driving up the prices on everyday goods and services that you use. So they've closed pipelines. They've made drilling and fracking more expensive, all with the message of this is better for the environment, blah, blah, blah. They're not granting new oil and gas leases or renewing them. And so here's the result. Today, oil is over $90 a barrel compared to $60 a year ago and $40 in 2020. Don't you think that's going to have an effect on not only the price of gas at the pump and your fuel oil, but also the cost of the goods that you go out and buy every day? Even the groceries that you buy need energy to be produced and to get from point A to point B. In addition to that drastic mistake, the Biden administration created the American Rescue Plan last year and flooded another $2 trillion. Trillion. I can't even get my mind around this number into our market and into our economy through cash and various incentives. And what did this do? It delayed people returning to work. So guess what? It makes it harder to produce the goods and services, making those goods and services more scarce, driving up the price because supply is exceeded by demand. And they grew the money supply by 40%. So on top of the Fed being passive when it came to quantitative easing and not raising rates to slow down how quickly people can get money, the Biden administration and this government flooded the money supply by 40%. And at the same time, we're not recognizing the fact that people were taking most of those dollars and putting them into pockets, while a lot of the things that they wanted to do, such as travel, was unavailable, or going to a restaurant or staying in a hotel. A lot of these things were shut down because of government mandates and overreaches. So those vaccine mandates slowed the openings of certain businesses, again, making things more restrictive, restricting economic activity and production. So whatever your views are on the need or necessity for vaccines and all these other things, what cannot be denied is that the mandates slow down the ability to get those goods and services flowing. And so that's another contributor. So here's our conclusion. The government has no idea how to fix this problem. They don't even know what's causing the inflation. I think they need to listen less and be political, or listen more and be political less. This is not a transitory thing. This inflation hopefully can be gotten under control. And no, a little bit of inflation isn't good. They'll trot out that line. Well, it's good to have a little bit of inflation. Well, that's fine, but not at 7.5%. And no, this isn't all about corporate greed and gouging. Oh, we're just taking advantage of the situation. Home Depot's raising their prices on the average man just to make a buck on top of the backs of the working man. No, that's not it. The cost of producing those goods and passing them along to you is getting higher because of these and other mistakes. And so the government doesn't want to admit it's at least partially to blame and fix it. And so we have too much money chasing too few goods. So here's what needs to happen. The government needs to stop spending so much and it needs to stop proposing to spend more. These are political tools that are being used to get reelected. Bottom line, folks, when the government spends money at this rate, it's about one thing and one thing only: people in government keeping their jobs. And that's not what they're there for. They're there to serve the American public. And they need to start encouraging people to work for the benefits that they're getting, not to hand out cash. And they need to stop the mandates, and they need to stop the restrictions. So these are some of the headwinds that we're facing as we help build a comprehensive plan. And it points out the need even greater than before. In the midst of wars, rumors of wars, inflation, volatility in the markets, volatility in our economy, we need to have a comprehensive written plan to manage risk, not just market risk, but inflation risk, tax risk, the risk of somebody getting sick or going into a nursing home. And so I'd love to chat with you about how you can put a plan like that in place and sleep well at night. I'd love to visit with you. My team and I would love to get to know you and talk to you more about how you can have a financial independence roadmap.